Welcome back, fellow explorers and curious minds. Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey into the heart of one of the world's most enigmatic wonders, the Great Pyramid of Giza. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the captivating and mysterious Queen's Chamber, a place shrouded in intrigue and riddles that have left researchers and Egyptologists puzzled for centuries. Join us as we delve deep into the inner workings of the pyramid, deciphering the secrets of this remarkable chamber. We'll discuss its layout, its history, and the ongoing exploration efforts that have uncovered hidden truths and sparked new questions. We'll be taking you behind the scenes to witness the dedicated efforts of modern explorers, using cutting-edge technology to unveil the mysteries concealed within these ancient walls. So, get ready to quench your thirst for knowledge as we journey into the heart of history. Whether you're an avid history buff or just someone with a curious mind, this exploration of the Queen's Chamber is sure to leave you in awe. Without further ado, let's begin our adventure. Unraveling the secrets of the Queen's Chamber, the Great Pyramid Exploration. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you never miss an episode of our exciting explorations. Let's go! The Queen's Chamber. Here, we can observe a horizontal passage leading into the northeast corner of the Queen's Chamber. If you look closely, you'll notice that the two layers of masonry that make up the walls at the south end of the horizontal passage also extend into the chamber itself. Additionally, there is a noticeable hole in the north wall of the chamber, which was created by Wayneman Dixon in 1872 during his exploration of the Queen's Chamber shafts. What's distinctive about this chamber, unlike the King's Chamber, is that there isn't a massive lintel stone above the entrance, spanning two layers of masonry. Instead, the stone above the chamber's doorway is the same height as the others in the third layer, and you can just discern a fracture running through this stone in the layer above it. This structural detail provides valuable insights into the construction of the Queen's Chamber and sets it apart from the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. On the west side of the chamber's doorway, there is an excess of stone intentionally left in place at the corner, and this was done to protect the stone during transportation and the construction process. As Petrie explains, this projection on the western side mentioned by Professor Smith is not just limited to one side of the corner but extends on both sides. It serves the purpose of safeguarding the stone while it is being moved and as it is being incorporated into the structure. The part of the chamber that remains undressed, or not fully finished, is removed down to the actual surface at the top and at the middle joint. This removal helps guide the workers on precisely where further finishing work is needed. The excess stone in the chamber begins 1.3 units below the joint at the top of the doorway and extends 1.4 units, with a width of 5.5 units. It is then dressed down by 1.05 units at the middle joint and continues to slope more thinly towards the floor. In the passage leading to the chamber, the projection is a maximum of 1.5 units at the base, typically around 0.8 units, and it has a maximum width of 5.5 units, usually 4.5 units. This area with the excess stone projection, in addition to the questionable nature of the chamber's flooring, appears to be the only portion of the chamber that remains unfinished. The name, Queen's Chamber, has historically been used, but it may not be entirely accurate according to modern Egyptology. Scholars like Lehner and Hawass suggest that this chamber is more likely to be a serdab. A serdab is a term used to describe a blind chamber in which a statue of the deceased was placed, a common feature in the tombs of nobles. Similar to serdabs found in other tombs, the floor and walls of the chamber in Khufu's pyramid were left somewhat rough and unfinished. However, there is room for questioning whether the chamber is genuinely unfinished. The masonry work in this chamber is of high quality, with only the area near the door appearing less refined. Additionally, as Petrie notes, the floor is made of rough core masonry, but this doesn't rule out the possibility that fine paving may have been placed on top of it at some point. Piazzi Smith offered his perspective on this matter, which may shed further light on the subject. The materials used for the walls, roof, and niche in this chamber are made of fine white limestone. However, when it comes to the floor, it appears rough and uneven, seemingly consisting of the general masonry used in the construction of the pyramid. Consequently, the room lacks a proper floor, which raises questions about where the upper surface of such a floor might have been located in terms of height. This unique condition of the chamber becomes more apparent when you examine the structure of the walls. They not only differ from the general masonry used in the rest of the pyramid but also stand out in terms of their whiteness, the beauty of the material, and the precision of the joints compared to any of the passages that have been explored so far. The joints between the stone blocks are so tight that the edges of the two worked stone surfaces and the cement filling between them are often barely distinguishable, sometimes as thin as a hair's thickness. This remarkable feature was particularly noticeable on the west wall, where the presence of cement in both vertical and horizontal joints was duly observed. In other parts of the chamber, identifying the joints can be challenging due to a semi-glazed coating of saline material on the walls. This substance is likely a modern exudation from the stone, as evidenced by some inscriptions scratched on the north wall, dated to 1824, which now have a raised outline of salt around and on them. The same salty substance was observed filling a crack that appeared to have been caused by pressure on the west wall. In a few places, small portions of the original surface of the wall stones were visible and bore traces of having once been expertly smoothed and finished. Today, the chamber walls, and so on, have been cleaned and restored. The walls, previously marred by soot stains and covered in various graffiti, have been cleared of these marks, and the issue of salt buildup has been addressed through humidity control measures. Typically, this chamber is not accessible to regular tourists unless they are part of a private tour group. While there has been speculation about the possibility of this chamber serving as a serdab, its actual function remains largely unknown. Some theories propose that it might have initially been intended as the king's chamber but was later abandoned when a change in the construction plan led to the decision to position the chamber higher up in the pyramid superstructure. Edrisi's description of the pyramid is particularly intriguing in this context, and it was referenced by Petrie, who said, "It may be an open question whether the queen's chamber was not the sepulchre of Khufu Khufu, the co-regent of Khufu." Edrisi, in his accurate and observant account of the pyramid, 1236 AD, mentions an empty vessel in the queen's chamber. And that this was not a confused notion of the coffer now known, is proved by his saying that in the king's chamber an empty vessel is seen here similar to the former. Whether any fragments of a coffer remained there, among the great quantity of stone excavated from the floor and niche, it is almost hopeless to inquire, since that rubbish is now all shot away into various holes and spaces. Caviglia, however, did not find a coffer when clearing the chamber, but fragments might have been easily overlooked. Edrisi's description of a second sarcophagus should not be easily disregarded, as we can draw a comparison with the interior of Menkaura's pyramid. Inside Menkaura's pyramid, we can see a decorated sarcophagus in the lower granite chamber. However, in the larger upper chamber, there's a pit excavated into the floor that strongly resembles a sarcophagus pit in every aspect. In essence, the presence of an additional sarcophagus or the notion of a second burial chamber should not be dismissed too hastily, especially when we observe similar features in the design of other pyramids like Menkaura's. This observation suggests the possibility of such arrangements within pyramid structures. Edrisi's initial description is rather concise, and it's regrettable that we didn't receive additional details regarding the state of the chamber. For example, there's no information about the presence of a floor or any record of any search or investigative activities that might have taken place in the chamber during his time. Centuries later, when Greaves visited the chamber during his travels from 1637 to 1640, his account paints a different picture, one of considerable damage and destruction. Greaves noted a scene that indicated significant disturbance and disruption within the chamber, where he said, "This leadeth, running in length upon a level 110 feet, into an arched vault, or little chamber, which, by reason it was of a grave-like smell, and half full of rubbish, occasioned my lesser stay. This chamber stands east and west. The length of it is less than 20 feet, the breadth about 17, and the height less than 15. The walls are entire, and plastered over with lime. The roof is covered with large smooth stones, not lying flat, but shelving, and meeting above in a kind of arch, or rather an angle. On the east side of this room, in the middle of it, there seems to have been a passage leading to some other place. Obtaining a clear understanding of the damage inside the Queen's chamber and identifying the individuals responsible for various search and excavation activities is a challenging task. Over time, numerous people have entered and exited the chamber, either clearing debris or conducting new excavations. Notable figures such as Caviglia, Howard Weiss, and Paving had all been involved in operations within the chamber. They were not the first to undertake digging activities in this chamber. Piazzi Smith, who arrived at the pyramid after those people, provided his own description of the chamber. This underscores the complex history of exploration and intervention within the Queen's Chamber, with multiple parties contributing to its evolving state. There were also a massive quarry hole in the eastern section of the floor, situated beneath an unusual niche in the wall. Additionally, a substantial pile of stones and debris in the northwest corner of the chamber, and it reached almost a third of the chamber's height. Smith eventually took the initiative to remove all the accumulated debris from the chamber. It's quite probable that a portion of this debris was used to fill the enormous quarry hole, resolving some of the issues with the chamber's clutter. Based on the information provided by Pairings here, we can see the excavations that were conducted on both the passage and the chamber floor. The massive quarry hole that Smith mentioned can be found beneath the niche. The most significant excavation is the one carried out in the back wall of the niche, and it is likely the passage alluded to by Greaves. In this illustration, which provided by Pairing, we are presented with an overhead view of the excavation conducted at the rear of the niche. Regarding these excavations, Pairing would make the following statement. From the recess at the east end of the chamber is a forced passage extending 50 feet eastward into the pyramid. The excavations C and D in the horizontal passage had been made some years before, and filled in again, it is supposed, by Mr. Caviglia, and were subsequently reopened, and carried to a much greater extent, particularly under the stone that forms the step by Colonel Howard Weiss, who also made the excavation E near the recess in the apartment. A substantial tunnel, as that, would inevitably produce a significant amount of debris, particularly when you consider the increased volume needed for its storage due to compaction. In this early image by the Edgars, we can observe one of the brothers seated on the debris inside the niche on the east wall of the chamber. The other figure is facing the doorway of the chamber. The niche has been meticulously crafted, with a depth of 2 cubits into the wall. Its widest part at the base measures 3 cubits and maintains this width all the way up to the top of the doorway. At the top, there are a series of corbels, each a quarter cubit wide, which narrows the width of the niche to 1 cubit. The prevailing suggestion for the purpose of this niche is that it would have been designed to hold a statue. Here, we have a more recent photograph taken from a similar perspective. In fact, you can still discern some of the graffiti that appeared in the earlier Edgar image. The darkening of the chamber walls, resulting from the use of numerous torches and similar light sources, was noted by early explorers. However, in recent times, restoration efforts have successfully removed this soot and grime. The debris on which Edgar was seated has been cleared away, and a protective grille has been installed over the forced tunnel at the rear of the niche. This tunnel extends back approximately 15.30 meters. In the more recent image here, it's evident that the cleaning of the chamber walls has been completed. One can observe a fracture that extends almost the entire height of the niche, within the masonry between the doorway and the niche. Additionally, it's worth noting the rough and uneven quality of the chamber's floor. From this perspective, it's apparent that the niche in the east wall is not perfectly centered. According to measurements taken by Piazzi Smith and Petrie, the niche appears to have been intentionally positioned predominantly to the south of the chamber's east-west axis. This axis has also been determined by Petrie to align with the pyramid's east-west axis. As a result, the upper 4 corbels are situated in the southern half of the pyramid, whereas the bottom space, which is 3 cubits wide, has 2.75 cubits positioned to the south and 0.25 cubits placed to the north. Additionally, you can see a dark area on the south wall, which serves as the opening for the southern shaft. The schematic of the chamber presented here is based on cubits and is derived from the data provided by Petrie and Piazzi Smith. The green areas on the diagram indicate the positions of the shafts and illustrate how the uppermost section of the horizontal passage aligns with the roof line of the chamber. The roof line of the passage, along with the chamber's east-west axis, neatly separates the upper 4 corbels from the part of the niche situated below the passage roofline. The chamber has a width of 10 cubits, with the east-west length extending to 11 cubits. The height at the wall appears to be 9 cubits, while the ceiling's apex seems to be 3 cubits higher, at 12 cubits. This layout suggests that whole numbers of cubits, specifically 9, 10, 11, and 12 cubits, were used to design the chamber's dimensions. Petrie discussed several theories regarding the intended dimensions of the chamber but described the cubit-based scheme presented above as the simplest theory of all. Petrie also pointed out that the vertical axis of the niche was approximately 80 cubits away from the north wall of the gallery, which corresponds to about 2/5 of the length of the descending passage. There's a potential connection to Petrie's measurement in the observation made by Dormian, who suggested in his drawings that the end of the 2-cubit-long segments of masonry in the horizontal passage, starting from the north wall of the gallery, would be positioned halfway along the 80-cubit distance, at 40 cubits. However, it's worth noting that we don't have precise data to confirm this hypothesis. The vertical axis of this niche drew the attention of pyramidologists who were searching for evidence of a sacred 25-inch cubit. They managed to find this evidence by calculating the distance between the chamber's east-west axis and the niche's vertical axis. This distance can also be expressed simply as 1 1/4 cubits, which would be approximately 25.8 inches if we consider a cubit to be 20.64 inches. Petrie, a scholar well-versed in pyramid theories and aware of the significance attributed to the niche, conducted thorough measurements of the niche and stated his findings by saying, "This cubit is the regular cubit of 20.6 inches, and there is no evidence of a cubit of 25 inches here. The uppermost 4 corbels in the niche do not have uniform heights and show some variation. The lowest corbel has an average height of approximately 31.79 inches, while the uppermost corbel has the smallest measurement of 27.70 inches. The widest section of the niche had an average height of about 67.14 inches, and a joint level that marked the top of the doorway was reported to have an average height of 67.44 inches. Meriglio and Rinaldi, who conducted these measurements, reported these findings, where they said, "The walls of chamber are formed of very large limestone blocks. The heights of the courses differ sensibly and also from one side wall to the other so that the joints do not always meet in the chamber corners. These differences, however, are always less than 2 cms. And the mean difference is about 6 mm. The walls were well dressed and flat with very thin joints filled with mortar. Today the walls show many fissures and the blocks are, at times, quite extensively flaked." Regarding the floor of the chamber, Meriglio and Rinaldi provided the following information. The actual pavement is very rough as it is composed of the nucleus masonry. On it can be noted the leveling cuts characterizing the preparation of rock or masonry for the superimposing of a course made of slabs or blocks having unequal thicknesses. This seems to indicate that here a pavement made of at least one course of white limestone slabs was laid. At the general level of the rough pavement, along its sides and those of the southern part of H horizontal passage, we noticed a kind of footing or ledge made out of fine stone and well dressed. It juts out from 2.5 cms to 10 cms from the walls, and it has always been used as the starting point for measuring all the heights in the chamber. It appears evident to us that a real pavement was inserted in chamber, our Queen's chamber, and, contrary to Petrie's opinion, we think it must have had the same level as the northern and higher part of the pavement. Here, we can observe some of the leveling cuts mentioned by Meriglio and Rinaldi. The presence of these cuts suggests that there might have been flooring fitted to the rough core masonry. It's likely that each floor stone was unique in shape and required some adjustments to fit onto the rough core masonry. Although we don't have any surviving fine flooring in the Queen's chamber today, the absence of such flooring doesn't necessarily mean it was never present. In other chambers, like Khafra's burial chamber, fine limestone paving once covered a significant portion of the floor, and it remained intact when Belzoni discovered it. However, Paring later removed this flooring during his search for a hidden chamber, and it's now lost, which is a relatively modern event. So, the lack of flooring in the Queen's chamber can be explained in a similar way, where it was likely removed by earlier explorers and searchers. Apart from the cuts mentioned, are there any other clues that could help in reconstructing the original floor level? Meriglio and Rinaldi suggested a floor level that matched the step in the passage floor or a paving about 1 cubit thick. Petrie had reservations about this idea due to the similar rough nature of the horizontal passage floor. Meriglio and Rinaldi argued against the use of thin flooring slabs for this passage, as no such thin slabs exist elsewhere in the pyramid. However, I find this argument somewhat weak. Most of the passages in the pyramid are inclined and subjected to heavy traffic, such as plug stones, for instance. The horizontal passage, on the other hand, would experience lighter traffic and could have employed thin slabs to cover the rough floor and create a square bore of approximately 2 cubits. To find more clues, we can examine the king's chamber, which has retained much of its flooring, likely due to its granite material. However, understanding the architect's intent for this floor in the king's chamber presents a significant challenge. The king's chamber floor is composed of substantial granite blocks set between the walls, but the upper surface of these blocks is not level with the base of the granite walls. Instead, it is positioned at a specific level above the base, creating 2 different heights for the chamber. The first height is determined by the 5 equal courses of granite, while the second height is the shorter distance from the paved floor. Calculating the second height is more challenging due to the uneven nature of the pavement, which can vary by as much as 2.29 inches between 42.94 and 40.65 inches below the first course joint. Petrie suggested, based on the average of his measurements, that the simplest theory for the height was that the pavement level should be set 1/4 of a cubit above the base of the walls. Petrie conducted a methodical analysis of the height of the paving in the Queen's chamber. He proposed that the upper surface of the paving would be set at half the height of the base of the King's chamber walls. The base of the walls was designed to be at 1,688.5 inches above the base. Half of this height, 844.2 inches, should be the intended paving height. However, the rough floor of the Queen's chamber is documented as being 834.4 inches above the base. This suggests that a paving thickness of about 9.8 inches would be required to match the intended height. Additionally, subtracting these 9.8 inches from the apex height of the Queen's chamber would result in the height of the 5 courses in the King's chamber. Petrie's proposed solution, similar to Meriglio and Rinaldi's, retains the rough horizontal passage floor with its holes, which appears inconsistent with the overall grandeur of the structure. His solution would still result in a step in the floor, albeit now at half the previous height. This step seems out of place, especially considering that convention dictated that passage floors leading to chambers should be on the same level, as observed in the King's chamber. In the King's chamber, one can walk without stooping as the passage height is approximately 1.11 meters, although it may have been originally intended to be 2 cubits high to match the passage's width. The presence of a step in the Queen's chamber floor doesn't align with this conventional design. This example underscores the challenge of deciphering the architect's original intentions. This challenge is particularly significant when dealing with a wide range of measurements and various theories that could potentially fit within this range of variability. Some theories offer highly precise dimensions, even extending to 10 decimal places, each claiming to be the correct solution. However, this pursuit can often resemble a fruitless endeavor, akin to a dog chasing its own tail. When considering the height of the horizontal passage in cubits, we encounter a discrepancy. Is it 2 1/4 cubits, 63 digits, or 2 cubits 2 palms, 64 digits? Using a cubit of 20.63 inches, this would be approximately either 46.4 or 47.2 inches. This variance can also be influenced by the individual tradesman's choice of cubit and their precision in executing the architect's plans. For example, if we take Petrie's mean chamber width for the east wall of the Queen's chamber, which he states as 205.68, it is likely intended to be 10 cubits. This suggests that if the work is carried out accurately, it might imply a cubit rod of 20.57 inches. Similarly, the chamber's mean length of 226.47 would translate to 11 cubits of 20.59 inches. This doesn't necessarily mean that these were the exact dimensions of the cubit rod used, as other factors need to be considered. Nevertheless, it underscores the challenge of determining the intended dimensions in often damaged structures. Let's turn our attention to the pyramid that preceded the Great Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, built by Sneferu at Dahshur. This pyramid can be considered a Giza-class pyramid, and its chamber layout provides some insights. In this pyramid, we find 2 lower chambers oriented north-south, while the larger upper chamber is oriented east-west. It's worth noting that the descending passage's size in the Red Pyramid set a common standard for Giza. The horizontal passage leading to the upper chamber in the Red Pyramid is 2 cubits wide and 2 cubits high. This design with a square bore of 2 cubits leading to a significant chamber in the Red Pyramid establishes a precedent, and it's not unlikely that a similar design could have been used in Khufu's pyramid. In this diagram, we can see the proposed pavement levels suggested by Petrie and Meriglio and Rinaldi, as well as the pavement level left by a 2-cubit square passage, as seen in the Red Pyramid. This solution would cover the rough pavement in the horizontal passage, which has been a point of concern for many researchers. To break it down further, if we consider the thin paving in the horizontal passage as being 2 palms thick and add it to the 1-cubit step in the passage, we would have a chamber paving thickness of 1 cubit and 2 palms. This measurement represents 1/7 of the chamber wall's height, which is approximately 9 cubits. The ceiling beams in the Queen's chamber exhibit variations in width, and there are a total of 6 pairs. The joint lines of each pair are not aligned but overlap each other. The widest beams, which run in an east-west direction, measure approximately 1.23 meters, while the narrowest visible beam is about 0.92 meters. Weiss conducted an excavation under the ceiling in the northwest corner of the chamber to determine the length of the beams behind the wall face. He reported a length of 9 feet 10 inches, and Petrie provided a more precise measurement of 121.6 inches or 3.09 meters. This length is only slightly longer than the visible sloping length inside the chamber, which has been measured at values ranging from 3.01 to 3.05 meters. Petrie suggested that these measurements indicate a consistent pattern for the ceiling beams. He said, "Throws the center of gravity of each of the slabs well behind the wall face, so that they could be placed in position without pressing one on another." It's uncertain whether additional layers of ceiling beams were placed above the visible ceiling, similar to what we observe in some of the smaller pyramids built during the Old Kingdom, particularly those from the 5th and 6th dynasties. Here we can see an excavation in the northwest corner of the chamber. It's unclear how far the ceiling beams extend beyond the end walls. Paring's drawings suggest that they might extend beyond the end walls, and it's possible that the masonry making up the tympana, the triangular space between the end of the ceiling beam and the chamber wall, was fitted after the end beams had been placed. This section by Meriglio and Rinaldi illustrates how the top of the chamber walls align with the ceiling beams. M&R suggests that the beams were dressed and aligned with the chamber walls sometime after they were initially laid, following the traditional Egyptian construction practice. In fact, along the top of the north and south side walls, the roofing beams exhibit a distinct offset, protruding downward by 2-3 centimeters. Given the considerable depth of the beams into the side walls, how was the wall masonry adapted to the slope of these beams? In Paring's drawing here, we can see that some of the wall masonry inclines somewhat. Considering that the excavation in the northwest corner extended far enough to determine the length of the beam, one might have expected Paring to have observed how the wall masonry was fitted. We simply do not know if his drawing is accurate or what he believed. Meriglio and Rinaldi commented on it, saying, "According to Paring, the laying beds of the courses making up the north and south walls are not horizontal but slant downwards, starting with that of the 4th course." Instead, Petrie is rather explicit in this regard and in his volume, Pyramids and Temples, etc. The joints between the courses are all drawn horizontal except, naturally, that between the uppermost course and the butting beams, as the upper faces of the blocks here were cut obliquely for fitting them to the slope of the beams. A direct control is impossible, but anyway we prefer Petrie's version. Petrie's plate can hardly be described as explicit. It is a cross-section drawing of the pyramid, and as such, the Queen's chamber is depicted quite small and in a schematic manner. This serves as another example of how limited our knowledge is about the pyramid. In this modern age, we might expect to have access to more detailed data regarding this excavation and the masonry it intersects. Another excavation in the chamber, namely the tunnel cut in the back of the niche, is better documented, providing us with insights into the surrounding masonry. Meriglio and Rinaldi describe it as follows. Upon a close examination of this tunnel we found that for about 6-7 meters, starting from the niche end wall, the masonry is composed of large well-squared and dressed limestone blocks. Beyond these, there is the usual inner nucleus masonry made up of great blocks which are roughly dressed only on the horizontal faces, They have large vertical joints showing no presence of mortar. The courses of this masonry seem to be regular enough and are about 1.00 meters high. Therefore, it seems that all around the chamber was built a special kind of masonry which was particularly laid and different from the rest. However, one cannot clearly distinguish a division between the two qualities of masonry as they are closely bonded and show no definite dividing face. They provided further comments regarding this breach in their observation 24. It is quite probable that the violators made the tunnel visible today in the end wall of the niche because they found a block which was 1.08 meters wide, 0.84 meters high, 0.95 meters above the actual pavement and symmetrical with the niche sides there. This symmetry must have raised suspicions in the violators' minds, and they removed the block by breaking the niche above and to the right of the block itself. As both these parts are damaged for a distance of 1.58 meters, it may be that the block was 3 cubits long. After having removed the first block and seeing that the sides of the breach were well dressed and with thin joints, the thieves were even more convinced to have discovered a plugged corridor, and continued the breach for almost 15 meters before giving up the undertaking. From the materials provided by Marigiolio and Rinaldi, we can examine the section and plan of the tunnel originating from the niche. This tunnel extends through rough core masonry, and its dimensions are quite significant. The section specifically shows how the tunnel passes through this rough core masonry. It's worth noting that a stone with a 2-cubit width in the back wall of the niche could not have been easily overlooked by tomb robbers. The lintel above the opening has also been substantially cut, likely to facilitate the removal of the closing stone. Dormian, based on these observations, suggests that the section through the high-quality masonry appears to be deliberately made. Where he said, finally, the entire ceiling forms a lintel, an arrangement which has practically no chance of occurring in a normal excavation. The intricate ceiling design in the tunnel does not seem to continue into the rough core masonry section. According to Dormian's figure 59, this part of the tunnel has 2 stones forming the ceiling. The first stone is 1.65 meters long, and the second one is 3.37 meters long. Dormian's work provides more detailed information and drawings of this area, even though more data about the tunnel would be desirable. However, based on the available information, the initial 5-meter-long fine masonry section of the tunnel appears to be a constructed passage intentionally left within the masonry. This might seem somewhat illogical. Dormian questioned the theory that the niche contained a statue and instead proposed that it might have served as a weight-relieving structure, similar to the corbelled window above the shaft at the Midim pyramid. He suggested that both the niche and the passage left behind it could have been designed to relieve weight for a hidden passage or chamber beneath the Queen's chamber. However, it's not certain whether there is indeed a hidden chamber below the Queen's chamber. There is also the possibility that the niche was intended to hold a statue. The displacement of the niche to the southern half of the pyramid's east wall may have held some symbolic significance. The fine masonry section behind the niche appears to have been left as part of the chamber's construction, with a narrow passage leading to the chamber. Due to the limited available data on the chamber, it's challenging to visualize the exact construction process, including the placement of the beams and other details. It's conceivable that the construction process may have faced challenges, necessitating a temporary access passage for workers during construction. Once the horizontal passage to the chamber was accessible, the temporary passage behind the niche would have been sealed with masonry. Robbers likely later discovered this sealed passage and attempted to find treasure within it, albeit in vain. Thank you all for joining us on this amazing journey into the Queen's Chamber inside the Great Pyramid. We hope you've enjoyed these explorations and the mysteries we've shared with you. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family, and leave your comments and questions in the boxes below. We love hearing your feedback and suggestions. If you'd like to stay with us and follow our future adventures, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all our latest updates. Thanks again, and I wish you a wonderful day. We'll see you soon with more explorations and puzzles. Goodbye.